Hello, citizens of the Imperium. I am Inquisitor Vaughn, and I wanted to thank you for watching this vidpict about the exciting opportunities that you have to serve the Emperor and the Imperium of Man. I will be going over available options, as well as explaining the path to how to get to where you want to go. If you are watching this video, it's most likely that you're being forced to watch it by your planet's enforcement corps, but I know that there's a percentage of you that are really interested in doing more with your lives. Chances are, working in the manufactorums for 16 hours a day, or any of the other soul-draining, sometimes literally, jobs that the Imperium has assigned to you, just isn't cutting it anymore. You need some action, you need some excitement. If this sounds like you, then you should join the Imperial Military Forces. The Imperium of Man always needs more men and women who are willing to bully the will of the Emperor on Xenos and traitors across the galaxy. So, let's start from the ground up. You are just a normal, regular citizen in the Imperium on a relatively stable world somewhere in the galaxy who wants to fight the enemies of mankind. Where do you begin? Well, every imperial world has an imperial governor. It is a responsibility of every imperial governor to have an armed and trained militia that he or she can call upon to defend the planet from attack, invasion, or unrest until the larger imperial guard regiments or even the space marines arrive. This organization is called the Imperial Militia, or more formally, the Planetary Defense Force. Planetary defense forces are the oldest military structures in the Imperium of Man's history. Ever since humanity spread out amongst the stars, each planet colonized by our species eventually created a planetary defense force to defend itself from the threats of this indifferent universe that we live in. All of the old 100 that stood in defense of Terra and the Sol System during the Horus Heresy were in essence planetary defense forces. By joining a PDF, you are joining the most basic and long-standing form of human military in the Imperium of Man. As a citizen of an imperial world and a loyal servant of the Emperor of Mankind, it is your duty to defend your planet in the event that it is attacked. Therefore, technically speaking, every citizen on an imperial world is a member of its militia or planetary defense force. It is therefore also the responsibility of every citizen to know how to use some sort of weapon and be fit enough to fight should they need to. However, usually formalized militias are organized and offer formal training. These organizations are publicly known and contain the words militia or planetary defense force or PDF in their name, right? They are always recruiting, so if you're interested in becoming a fighting citizen, the PDF is your first choice. There are some negatives to joining a PDF. First, PDFs are under the command of the planetary governor, who you would hope is loyal to the Emperor. Sometimes that's not always the case, and they're actually traitors or corrupt or infiltrated by Xeno species like the Gene Stealer cult. The good news is that if you don't care and you just want to fight, or if you love your world so much that its defense is more important than anything to you, the PDF is perfect for you. At least until the Space Marines arrive. Depending on the world that you are on, the Defense Force might be a uniformed, structured military, something that makes you feel good and proud to be a part of. But then again, on some worlds, especially hive worlds, the Defense Force might be composed entirely of literal street gangs. This might sound bad, but this is the case because the gangs are the most aggressive, violent, and armed people in the environment. Imperial governors will pay and give weapons to the gangs, essentially sponsoring them, so long as they fight enemies who try to invade the planet. If you think about it, hive gangs already claim territory that isn't really theirs and are willing to fight, kill, and die over it. If you sponsor the most powerful gangs who claim the most territory, you basically have a standing military that will protect your world in the event that it is invaded or attacked. Now, as an Inquisitor, I wouldn't necessarily recommend joining a gang as a way of joining a world's militia, because it could lead to some negative outcomes that I'll talk about later. If possible, seek out your planet's formal militia or planetary defense force and fight that way. But if you're on a hive world, you gotta do what you gotta do to get where you want to be. Two other negatives or cons are that because of the possibility of corruption in a planetary defense force due to it being loyal to governors directly, PDFs aren't usually respected by the more formal fighting forces of the Imperium and are considered the lowest on the totem pole. Last but not least, the weapons and training you'll receive won't be as intensive as some of the larger branches of the Imperial military, but this can depend on the wealth of your world. At minimum, you'll learn how to use cheap, inexpensive firearms like autoguns, auto pistols, heavy stubbers, and grenades. Your world might even have access to transport tanks. No matter what, if you want to join a fighting force, take advantage of the opportunities you have around you and learn as much as possible because you never know when it will be valuable. So, starting out, you can either take the militia route or the gang route, and sometimes they are the same thing. But from here, you can either go in a law enforcement route or a more military route. If you want to go the more law enforcement direction, you can join your governor's enforcers, which are technically the security forces. As an enforcer, you will be serving your governor as their security guards. You have access to better structure, better weapons like shotguns, armors, and power mauls, and you'll see a lot of action. Though they might look the same, enforcers are not the same as Arbites. Arbites are not tied to a world other than Terra, and they are separate from the Imperial military forces. So let's say you've spent time in the PDF and you like it, but there's not enough action and you want to use more weapons, or you want to travel off your world and see a little bit more of the galaxy. What do you do then? You try for the Imperial Guard. The Imperial Guard, also known as the Astra Militarum, is the basic fighting force of the Imperium of Man. Organized into renowned regiments that specialize in their own fighting styles, the Imperial Guard are the army of the Imperium of Man. Literally, as the core strength of the Imperial Guard are its tanks and war machines, backed by hundreds of billions of infantry soldiers. Where planetary defense forces are tied to specific worlds and are a first level of defense against attack, Astra Militarum regiments may come from a specific world, but be deployed systems or even sectors away from their homeworlds wherever they're needed. The worlds that produce the Grand Imperial Guard regiments are war engines completely dedicated to the forming of soldiers and construction of weaponry for the Imperial Guard. Though there is no singular, uniform standard of organization of an Astra Militarum regiment, there is far more structure and training involved than with the planetary defense forces. Part of this structure is because it's at the Imperial Guard level that figures like commissars and other figures from the Schola Progenium come in. The Schola Progenium is a branch of the Imperial Church responsible for the education and training of officers for the Imperial Guard as well as its elite soldiers. Once figures from the Progenium get involved, things just get a lot more serious. If you are not already on a regiment homeworld, it is possible to be recruited into the local Imperial Guard regiment through the Planetary Defense Force, which is why I recommended that you go there first. The governor of your planet is responsible for fulfilling a tithe of soldiers from its Planetary Defense Force, the best soldiers that it has, so that they can be added to the local Imperial Guard regiment. The difference between the PDF and the Imperial Guard is, in the Imperial Guard, you'll reach immortality. The Imperial Guard regiments are known across the Imperium of Man as its foundational fighting force. The Cadian Shock Troops, the Armageddon Steel Legion, the Death Corps of Krieg, the Catachans, the Vostroyan Firstborn. Even smaller regiments like the Athonian Tunnel Rats and the Salvar Chem Dogs have reputations that precede them across the stars. If you want action, you'll see action in the Imperial Guard. If you want to fight the Imperium's wars against traitors and Xenos, you will definitely do so in the Imperial Guard. And sure, the average life expectancy of an infantry guardsman is only a few hours, but if you survive your first battle, you're basically a veteran. Plus, the machines of war you'll get to use will be way better than anything you'll get in the PDF. The basic weapon of every guardsman is the lasgun, in whichever pattern is used by your local regiment. None of that projectile projecting archaeotech. In the Imperial Guard, you get handheld, solar-powered heat guns. You get the good stuff. And if you like tanks, the Guard has tanks. They have the Baneblade, they have tanks like the Lehman Russ, the Rogel Dorn. These tanks aren't named after Primarchs for no reason. These are lords of war on the battlefield and the core strength of the Guard. So, like I said, If you take the militia route, you will have access to the Imperial Guard. If you take the gang route, you might end up in the Imperial Guard too, but not the way that you want to. Penal legions or penal regiments are for those who break the laws of the Imperium. They're basically prisoners drafted into the Imperial Guard by force. You do not want to become one of these guys. All kinds of horrible things happen to the penal regiments, and I don't want that for you. So just take the right route, take the militia route, take the PDF route, and join the Imperial Guard if you can. Okay, so let's just say that being part of the Imperial Guard is not enough for you. You need something more intense. You need some more rigorous training. You need some more risky warfare. Then you should join the Stormtroopers. The Tempestus Scions are the most elite troops of the Ordo Tempestus, also called the Militarum Tempestus. They are the best of the best, the Stormtroopers, and you can't really become one of them. Technically. Let me explain. To be an official scion, you have to have high connections in the form of a noble bloodline. Those chosen are chosen basically at birth from the children of prominent officials in the Imperium. So, if you happen to be the child of an Imperial governor, congratulations, you're about to be raised by the Schola Progenium. The Schola Progena is basically the school of special forces for the Imperial military. Most of the leadership of the Imperial Guard were trained in the Schola, but the Tempestus Scions are also trained there too. At the Schola, you will basically have your entire personality replaced by the Imperial Creed. Through intense mindscaping and inhumane physical training that kills the majority of those in the program, you will be prepared for your trials of compliance. And if you survive those, your selection day. The majority of those who graduate from the Progenium move on to the Schola Tempestus. The Tempestus Scions focus on special operations, airborne assault, enemy infiltration, deep strike deployments, and kill team operations. You name it, they do it. Scions fight in the thickest of the fighting. They are often dropped right in the middle of it as a decisive strike at the enemy. Because of their harsh training and mind-sculpted discipline, every Tempestus Scion is almost a perfect shot. They never hesitate when given a command, and they never run in the face of danger. This is why Inquisitors often have a cadre of stormtroopers under their command, especially if they do not have Astartes to call on. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. If Tempestus Scions are chosen from birth, how can I become one if I'm not a noble's child? There is a technicality here, and it's that while the Schola Tempestus is its own branch of the Imperial Guard as a whole, almost every Imperial Guard regiment has a Special Forces unit within its structure, and if you join the regiment and become the best fighter that you can, you might be able to join your regiment's special forces. These forces are called stormtroopers as well, but they're more characterized by the less standardized culture of their regiment. Each unit is called something different depending on the regiment that they're a part of. The Cadians call theirs the Kasserken, the Krieg call theirs Grenadiers, the Catechin call theirs Devils. Regardless of what they're called, while they might not have been trained in the Schola Progenium, they were trained on the fields of battle and are the best fighters that the regiments have to offer. The most notable weapon of the stormtroopers is the Hell Gun, which is basically a supercharged lasgun. Most regimental stormtroopers also have access to better armor than standard soldiers and air support. And speaking of air support, do you like planes? Are you too good for the ground and want to take the enemies of mankind from a bird's eye view? You should join the Imperial Navy. In the Imperium of Man, the Imperial Navy is divided into two components, the Aeronautica Imperialis and the Navis Imperialis. The Aeronautica Imperialis is what seems like it would actually be comparable to the Air Force, because it specifically focuses on the war and transport flyers of the Astra Militarum. The reason why it's considered part of the overall Imperial Navy is because a lot of the flyers used in the Imperialis can also be used in space, or are otherwise ship-to-surface vessels. Without the Aeronautica Imperialis, the Guard and the Stormtroopers would be useless, basically. The airmen of the Aeronautica Imperialis provide valuable air support to ground forces, they transport important units and resources across worlds, combat enemy flyers, and eliminate enemy artillery. These guys are integral to the Imperial military, and you could become one of them. You can join the Imperial Navy through the Guard, but if you know flying is what you're interested in, it's best to join the recruitment group for the Navy outright. The Imperium of Man is constantly at war, so training in the Imperial Navy is very direct, very hands-on, and violent. The basic training of the Navy prepares its recruits generally for warfare that is off the ground. From here, the candidates that survive are divided between the Aeronautica Imperialis and the Navis Imperialis. Those who are a part of the Aeronautica are trained on how to fly Valkyries and Vendettas as a standard because these are the most commonly used flyers of the Imperial military. But depending on how far you want to go and how aggressive you want to be, you might end up operating far heavier machinery like Thunderbolt fighters or any of the massive variants of the Marauder bombers. Now, as I mentioned, there is a second half of the Imperial Navy, and it's the Navis Imperialis, or simply the Imperial Navy. The Imperial Navy deals with the spaceships of the Imperium of Man and the void battles that take place between the Imperial Navy and the fleets of Xenos and heretics. There is no combat like void combat, no test of resolve like the tests taken aboard a vessel of the Imperial Navy. The horrors of battle in space are so unimaginable, it's hard to describe. To live aboard a ship is to live in a hive city in space. Some of these ships are so large that entire populations on them live their whole lives without ever seeing parts of the ship other than where they were assigned. If you have claustrophobia, the Navy is not for you, because imagine having to maneuver on tight corridors while encased in a void suit. Sicknesses bred through recycled air can wipe out entire decks, enemy combatants can board your ship without anyone ever knowing, and by the time communication reaches the bridge, the vessel is compromised. Then there's the terror of things like ship versus ship combat, where cannons the size of hive spires fire munition so large that the entire ship shakes with every shot. And once a void shield generator is depleted, a well-placed shot can depressurize the ship and space everybody, freezing them to death in seconds. Emperor forbid a warp travel goes wrong and a Jello field fails mid-journey. Sounds exciting, doesn't it? If you are a shooter, like a real door kicker, what you really want to do is become an Imperial Navy breacher. These are the men and women who board ships and defeat the enemy from within their own ships. As an Imperial Navy breacher, you'll be specializing in Zone Mortalis combat, which is the most dangerous form of combat. It's like fighting in the trenches, except the trenches are the winding corridors of a ship, the walls are metal, and there's a ceiling. It's like clearing a building of an enemy, but the building is a Space Hulk, and the enemy might be a Xenos, it might be a heretic, it might even be something else, and it's right around the next corner, or right above you, or right below you, and it's ready to kill you. If that sounds like your type of fun, join the Imperial Navy and become a breacher. You'll have access to state-of-the-art void suits that can provide your own oxygen and can withstand the demands of combat in space. You'll be given heavy-duty Navy shotguns. You'll basically be a Space Marine if Space Marines weren't already Space Marines. You'll basically be the Imperial military version of a literal Space Marine. Well, that's all I have for you today. I'm hoping that this vid has some valuable information and gets you fired up to serve the Imperium of Man. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more content on the 40k universe. Please recommend this to your hobby friends who might also be interested in this information. Without anything else to say, Inquisitor Vaughn out. Remember, the Emperor protects and the future is successor.